Hello, and welcome to If Guitars Could Speak. In our second episode, we will be reviewing another iconic guitar from history, Keith Richards' modified 1954 Fender Telecaster that he lovingly calls Micawber. Having been used on stage by Richards for nearly 50 years and already being well worn when Richards received it in 1971, Micawber is probably the highest mileage guitar in rock history. Micawber started its life as a stock 1954 Fender Telecaster, from the run known as Blackguards, a reference to the black pickguard that came on these early models. Its life between its release in the early 50s until 1971 is unknown, but we do know that the guitar was a gift from our good friend Eric Clapton to Keith for his 27th birthday. Always quick to gift guitars, Clapton clearly had a knack for matching the right guitar with the right player. The Rolling Stones were in France to record their magnum opus, Exile on Main Street, in an attempt to escape a 90% tax rate in the UK. The idea, Keith said, was to record it in exile. The Stones were coming off the death of their founding member and brother Brian Jones, and had to follow up their best album to that point, Let It Bleed. The pressure was on, as the Beatles had broken up less than a year before, and the Stones were now seen as the current kings of rock and roll. When Keith took possession of the 54 Tele, he kept it stock during the recording of Exile, but he did remove the low E string, making the guitar a 5-string guitar and tuning it to open G tuning. In 2002, Keith said, "Around the same time I was getting into Telecasters, I was experimenting with open tunings. I don't know why. Maybe it was because around that time, 67, we started having time off that we didn't know what to do with. So I started to experiment with tunings. Most people used open tuning basically just for slide. Nobody used it for anything else. But I wanted to use it for rhythm guitar, and what I found was of all the guitars, the Telecaster really lent itself well to a dry, rhythm, 5-string drone thing. In a way, that tuning kept me developing as a guitarist. Okay, now figure out a diminished 6 on it. You've got so little to work with. And that makes you reconsider 6-string concert tuning. Because if there's so much in that little space, how much am I missing on the other? You can transfer some of that back to the 6-string concert tuning. You can swap knowledge between one tuning and another." At some point on the 1972 tour to support Exile on Main Street, Keith's guitar tech, Ted Newman Jones III, replaced the neck single coil pickup with a Gibson PAF humbucker. Interestingly, he installed the pickup upside down with the pole pieces facing away from the neck rather than against it. He also replaced the bridge single coil with an old Fender lap steel pickup, balancing the tone between the growl and warmth of the humbucker and the jangly treble of the lap steel pickup. Whatever the setup, Keith was clearly enamored with the tone, making the guitar his number one Telecaster. He didn't actually come up with the name Micawber until sometime in the 1980s. Keith said, "There's no reason for my guitar being called Micawber apart from the fact that it's such an unlikely name. There's no one around me called Micawber, so when I scream for Micawber, everyone knows what I'm talking about." As Keith's guitar collection grew, he acquired a number of similar Teles, but Micawber can be easily identified from afar by its upper bout, which is worn down nearly to the bare wood on the top part of the body and the fretboard. This is from Keith's unorthodox picking style, which often has him strumming high on the fretboard rather than over the pickups as usual. In the early 80s, Keith's next guitar tech, Alan Rogan, made more modifications to Micawber, as well as all of Keith's other Teles to update the parts and help the guitars stay in tune. He got solid brass Tele bridges from Schecter Guitar Research and Spurzl tuners. Rogan would say, "You see, I had discovered the Schecter Telecasters for Pete Townsend, so I knew where to get a solid brass Telecaster bridge. That was the time period of all the part companies like Mighty Mite making better parts for guitars, better machine heads like Spurzl, for example. The Stones had been rehearsing up at the Longview farm, and I showed up for the last 3 weeks. That's when I made all the modifications to the Tele so they would sound better and stay in tune. I got the bridges from Schecter and got the tuners from Spurzl. I worked on all the guitars to make them better for the tour." Today, Micawber is still in heavy rotation among Keith's many guitars, both on stage and in the studio. As the Stones approach the 60th anniversary of their founding, many fans wonder when the band will slow down. It seems that nothing will ever stop the greatest rock and roll band in the world from doing their thing. When you think of how many songs and shows that Micawber has seen, how many backstage trysts, and how many stories that it has witnessed in the hands of Keith Richards, you really wish that one day guitars could actually speak. Thanks for watching another episode of If Guitars Could Speak. Keep an eye out for future episodes where we will examine other famous guitars of rock history. See you soon!